Well, it's time for us to go and take a look at the 2018 MacBook Air and see how the specific MacBook holds up in 2023. Now, I will tell you, I think the 2018 MacBook Air was fairly important. I'm glad Apple made a MacBook like this. But in 2023, this MacBook is about 5 years old almost as of this point, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense to go ahead and buy a MacBook like this in particular, considering that Apple has done a great and tremendous job with the pretty much successor of the whole entire MacBook Air lineup, which would be the M1 MacBook Air and M2 MacBook Air that we have currently. So I'll kind of explain that throughout this video, but in my opinion, I don't really think it's worth buying really any of the even Retina MacBook Airs unless we're talking about the ones that came out after 2020. And I'll explain that throughout this video. Now, if you want to pick up some MacBooks that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the MacBook Air, well, first of all, with the even concept behind this specific MacBook Air in particular, this MacBook Air came out in 2018. That's why they get the name the 2018 MacBook Air. And this was pretty much stemming off of the success of the previous MacBook Airs, which were those like standard MacBooks that had not the best display. They didn't really look that amazing, but they were cheap, they looked very slim, and for the most part, a lot of people liked them, which was really cool. Now with this MacBook Air in particular, the 2018 one, this is where Apple started to kind of, fix the things that were kind of wrong with these MacBooks in the first place. So I remember back in 2015, 2016, 2017, I was planning on buying a MacBook in 2016, and it was either between a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, and the biggest complaint that people had with the, MacBook Airs of that time, which basically were the displays. They said the battery life was good, even the performance was okay, but the display they just couldn't budge with that display. And guess what ended up happening? In 2018, many years after the displays even came out, Apple went ahead and pretty much, answered their questions. They said, hey, we're going to go ahead and fix this. And that is exactly what Apple ended up doing. So with the 2018 Retina MacBook Air, they ended up increasing the resolution of that display, and they made it look so much better. And I will definitely tell you, those 2018 MacBook Airs look really good. Not only do the displays look amazing, but the MacBook themselves look really nice. They are just so slim. The rose gold color of those MacBooks look amazing. And I definitely will tell you, the design, everything about those MacBooks look awesome. And it's definitely one of my favorite looking MacBooks for sure. And the display is very good. Of course, you're getting kind of thicker bezels around it, which is kind of expected as of this point. But if we're just talking about how good the displays look, it doesn't really get that much better than that one. So that was a very, very cool thing right there. Now, on top of that, I will tell you with the MacBook Air, you're still getting a pretty decent port selection. So with these MacBooks, what happened was before, you had kind of more ports on the 2015, MacBook Air, but Apple ended up going through and they did give us still the ability of having dual USB-Cs. So this was something that was very important because with the previous MacBook, not the, Air or Pro, the 12-inch one, they only gave us one USB-C port. I still to this day don't know why Apple even made those. It was a very, very weird thing they did. But what they should have done was create a dual USB-C MacBook and then pretty much take out the Retina MacBook, the Retina MacBook Air, and then they could have just sold those ones if they were powerful enough. So that would have been something that probably would have been a little bit more important. But beyond that, what they ended up doing with these Retina MacBook Airs was slimming down the bezels, giving us two USB-C ports, a headphone jack still, and then giving us a different style keyboard. So this was that infamous butterfly keyboard. It reduced travel like crazy, which some people may have liked, some people may have hated, but looks like a lot of people hated them because Apple moved away from them, but this MacBook still has it. And this is another reason why this MacBook probably wouldn't even be worth buying. Even if this MacBook keyboard was perfectly fine, then that's one thing, but the fact that it's not makes it probably that much worse of a deal. This is pretty much like a ticking time bomb. It can pretty much stop working at any moment. And Apple knows this now, and with all the new MacBooks they make, they do not, make these type of keyboards anymore. They've been in so many lawsuits. They've probably spent so much money trying to fix these keyboards, and it just really didn't make any sense for Apple to continue making these. So because of that, they have stemmed away from them. So there's no reason for you to go ahead and buy a MacBook like this if Apple doesn't even recommend buying them or even making them anymore. So that's kind of another thing to keep in mind right there too. And then you have the trackpad below that keyboard, which still functions very well. It's a very, very good trackpad. I love trackpads a lot that Apple makes. and their Magic trackpads are great, and this one on this MacBook is very good as well. So in terms of the exterior, I will definitely tell you it's still pretty okay. Like, it's not the first MacBook I'd recommend buying, but it is a very interesting styling and it still looks good. It is still a very good looking MacBook, and it's always been one thing I've always looked at these MacBooks because they just look so good right there. Now, internally, there are some key changes here that they made before. So I would say these MacBooks are overall more powerful than what they were with the Intel, well, the previous Intel ones before. However, they're still not as powerful as even the most basic of the M1 MacBook that you're getting this day and age. Now, first of all, you did start off with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which was pretty decent, but you could go up to 16 gigs of RAM if you really wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to buy a MacBook Air and then spec it out to 16 gigabytes of RAM. At that point, you should just have bought a MacBook Pro at that moment and then just done the same thing, spec it out to 16, but I guess a MacBook Air is perfectly fine for you as well. On top of that, this thing internally had a 1.6 gigahertz dual core processor, which honestly, it's not really that good, but it's not that bad either. It's very middle of the road, but you have to remember who the MacBook Air was kind of tailored to. The MacBook Air was not going to go through and be, tailored to the heaviest power user of all time. This MacBook was pretty much only tailored to, I would say, kind of students. I think students were the main, demographic for this specific MacBook. And the reason for that was because they were cheaper. They weren't the most expensive ones, and even if you look at Apple's keynotes for MacBook Airs, I've noticed they always talk about college, they always talk about school, and anytime I saw any student discounts or anything, they were mostly, showing the pictures of a MacBook Air. So I definitely will tell you, I think Apple was pretty much focusing around everything of these MacBook Airs directly to students because they know students don't really require that much power. They probably just need something that can, handle multitasking, a little bit of RAM, and you should be good to go. And that is why in this day and age, I don't really see the reason of buying something like a MacBook Air like these ones because Apple's philosophy was completely different during this time. I would say from the first MacBook Air up until the 2020 MacBook Air, the Intel one, it just didn't make any sense to go and buy them if you're somewhat even a power user because Apple wasn't focusing around these MacBooks around power. It wasn't until Apple made their M1 MacBook Air that things drastically started changing. And those changes included things like the change in the chipset that they used. The M1 chipset is a very good chipset. It can, realistically speaking, handle every single thing you throw at it for the most part. And that is a very good thing. With these 2018 MacBook Airs, the fans always kicking on. I still use mine from time to time since I installed Windows on it. The fans kick on all the time. It's just a laggy experience, and I just don't enjoy it that much. But my M1 products, they handle things so well. And I don't have to worry about anything there. And it's nice because it's still an Apple product. I'm still within the Apple ecosystem. And you don't really have to worry about those types of things when you're getting an M1 MacBook Air. So when it comes down to it, I wouldn't recommend buying a 2018 MacBook, Air anymore. I, in fact, probably wouldn't recommend buying one of those types of MacBooks. I would recommend buying any of the M1 models. An M1 MacBook Air or an M1 MacBook Pro is definitely going to do you much better. If you can actually get an M1 MacBook Pro, that would be amazing. But if you can't, I still think one of these MacBooks is still perfectly fine for the most part, like an M1 MacBook Air. But I just probably wouldn't recommend buying a 2018 MacBook Air anymore, if I'm being honest. So in terms of that, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.